Have you ever heard a story that sounds too wild to be true? Imagine rising from the very, very bottom of society to become one of the most powerful women on the planet. Well, that's the real-life story of Empress Theodora from 6th century Constantinople. Today, we're going to unpack how a controversial performer ended up on the throne, and believe me, changed the course of history. But the big question is, who was she, really? Okay, so to really get Theodora, you have to wrap your head around this huge contradiction. On one hand, you've got this image of her as a young woman on stage, a provocative performer from the lowest social class imaginable. And on the other, a deeply religious, powerful empress wielding almost absolute authority. How on earth does one person become the other? That's the puzzle we're putting together today. So to understand the empress in the palace, we've got to meet the young woman on the street. Her story kicks off in the wild, chaotic, and often pretty brutal entertainment world of 6th century Constantinople. Now, our main source for her early life, and definitely the most scandalous, comes from a historian named Procopius. And boy, did he paint a picture. He described a completely fearless young performer. And you have to understand, theater back then wasn't, Shakespeare in the Park. It was this gritty mix of acting, comedy, and what were basically erotic shows. And according to Procopius, Theodora was a star.
Okay, but here's where we have to pump the brakes. You've got to take everything Procopius wrote with a giant grain of salt. He wrote all these juicy details in what he called a secret history, a book that most historians today see as basically a political hijab, a vicious smear campaign written to make Theodora and her husband, the emperor, look as bad as possible.
So look, whether the wildest story is about her stage career or true or not, one thing is absolutely certain. Theodora came from nothing. Her early life was a masterclass in how to survive, how to be resilient, and how to outsmart a world that was completely dominated by powerful men. She was a fighter from day one. And this woman, who was forged in the fire of the city's underbelly, was about to have a chance encounter that would change, well, pretty much everything. Not just for her, but for the entire Byzantine Empire. Her rise to power was just breathtakingly fast. Around the year 522, she meets Justinian, the heir to the throne, and he is just completely captivated by her. Now, think about this. For him to marry her, an actress from the absolute lowest class, was totally illegal, unthinkable. So what does he do? He literally has the laws of the empire changed just to make it possible. And just 5 years after they meet, she goes from the stage to the throne. Crowned empress. It's one of the most unbelievable climbs to power in all of history. But, becoming empress is one thing, proving you deserve to be there is something else entirely. Her real trial by fire. The crisis that would forge her legacy came just a few years later. It's called the Nika Revolt. The year is 532. A massive riot started by rival chariot racing fans, yeah, really, explodes across Constantinople. And get this. It all starts in the Hippodrome, the very same place Theodora once performed. The city was a powder keg just waiting for a spark. And this isn't just some protest. This is a full-blown revolution. The city is literally on fire. Mobs are controlling the streets, and the original Hagia Sophia Cathedral, it's burned to the ground. It's total chaos, and the emperor and empress are trapped. Things get so bad that Emperor Justinian himself gives up. He's done. His top generals, his advisors, they all agree. It's over. They've got a boat waiting at the docks. They are packing up to abandon the capital, abandon the throne, and just run for their lives. And in that moment of absolute panic, Theodora speaks. She stands up in front of all these powerful men who are ready to flee and says, "Purple is the noblest shroud. Purple was the color of royalty." What she was saying was, I would rather die right here as your empress than live my life as a runaway. It was an absolute gut punch of a challenge. Her words completely changed the energy in the room. It was like a bolt of lightning. Inspired and probably a little shamed by her courage, Justinian and his generals rallied. They stayed, they fought back, and they crushed the revolt. The throne was saved. And from that day on, nobody, and I mean nobody, ever doubted that Theodora was a true ruler of the empire. So, she saved the throne. Incredible. But what makes her story so powerful isn't just that she got power, it's what she did with it. She never, ever forgot where she came from, and she used her new position to change that world. Her past basically became her political to-do list. Look at the laws she pushed for. Outlawing forced prostitution, bringing in huge penalties for human traffickers, giving women more rights in divorce, making sure they can inherit property. She even set up what was essentially a safe house for former prostitutes. You can feel her own life experience in every single one of these reforms. And that's the whole key to her story right there. You can draw a straight, unbroken line from the young woman fighting to survive in a man's world to the empress systematically changing the laws of that world to protect other women. Because of all this, some historians call her an early feminist figure. Now, obviously, that's a modern term. The idea of feminism wouldn't exist for centuries. But her actions, they were absolutely revolutionary for the 6th century. To use the highest power in the land to methodically lift up the status of women was, well, it was extraordinary. So, let's bring it all together. How should we think about this incredible person who was a performer and an empress, a survivor and a world-changing reformer? Well, the first thing to know is that it's really tempting to call this a redemption story. You know, the sinner who becomes a saint. But that completely misses the point. It suggests she had something she needed to be redeemed from. No, the real story here isn't about redemption. It's about continuity. It's about power. She didn't abandon her past. She weaponized it. The intelligence, the grit, the street smarts she learned at the bottom were the exact same tools she used to conquer the top. And then she used them to remake the whole system. And that leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. Theodora's power was so effective because she never lost the perspective she gained from her past. It really makes you wonder, not just about her time, but about ours too. How different would our world be if the people in charge never forgot what it's like at the bottom?